All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thursday, September 3rd, Trade Findings and Adjustments. Keith Bybee here with you again. Good to be with you this morning. Looks like we've got several people in now. Let's get started. So, welcome, guys. Been quite an interesting morning and couple of days. So, I would like to talk about Apple. Let's follow up real quick with Under Armour. We had talked about a January 2022 2250 strike leap calls. Not sure what those are priced at the moment. They're probably 5-10 cents higher at least. As we've got a decent bounce up on Under Armour, which is kind of what we were talking about. Let me just a sec grab the correct windows. Under Armour. Oops. There it is. 76 cents. What did I say? 62, so 13 cents. So, anyone who's interested in an Under Armour leap for such cheap amount, technically we are getting the breakout or bounce up above our resistance levels here, right at the 50-day, 1020, and now heading up at pretty close to the highs of the day at 1068. Highs I think must be 1070 or so. So the question is, with what's happening in the market, let me update this one. Today, and for the rest of this week, out through coming up to a 3-day weekend, do you feel confident enough with the market now starting to sell off a bit to place a trade on Under Armour for a bullish position? What do you guys think? No right or wrong answer, but I would like to let me hear what you guys think in the way of thoughts. Under Armour is going to kind of have to break the trend, right? It is today, that's for sure. One of the few. So let me tell you, if it was me, and this is kind of hypothetical because we already have stock positions on Under Armour. But if it was a new position for a leap, at the very least, I'd be considering however much I was willing to spend. If it was 10 contracts, I'd maybe go down to 3 or 4, or whatever the amount you thought of that you had room for in your account. I'd go down a bit, leg into it, because tomorrow, if it does start to follow the market and fall back down to test that 1020, you're going to want to wait till You know, what happens next week to see if we get buying back in after big money comes back into the market and supports that one, or if it continues to fall past 10, 20, and 10. And more importantly, this, that was a good drawing. Good job to me. That 1072 is pretty much the number. Support level. So again, I would think at the very least, be conservative and leg into it to see if it doesn't go higher, and look at possibly these next smaller points, just over 11, 1164, this pivot point close to 12 is where I'd be looking to take short-term profits. But if you were to leg in and it does fall, maybe it comes back down, tests that, and comes back up. I don't know. You'd be adding to the position to look out further out in time to maybe 13 or higher. Obviously, the true upside long term is closer up to 20. But if you've legged into a few contracts, you know, those are some price points that you could begin to start to leg out and maybe let things run on the last couple of contracts or so if it gets above 13. But me, I would either at least be conservative with it, or just on a week like this, on a day like this, maybe just skip this one. I'll leave those choices up to you. So can anyone help me understand, or at least give me your thoughts, and I'll give you my thoughts after on what is happening with Apple. Throw out a guess. Lost my mouse here. I'm gonna take these off. Throw out a thought, guys. What is the deal with Apple here? Because 2 days ago, if you remember, let me just zoom in, give you a little bit more to look at. Two days ago, Apple looked like it was breaking this, and that any chance of a, well, not any chance, but the likelihood of a sell-off after the split, right? Man, it just keep going up. 31st is here. Got a comment. The 31st here, this was the first. This was yesterday, the second. Today, over here on the 3rd. Yes, Rich, we'll go over that next, in fact. So I'm not hearing Your silence, everybody, is a little deafening. So here's my thoughts on Apple. Kevin and I yesterday, of course, it was looking like it was going to open here. Well, it did open at 137. And usually on a higher open and it comes down, you'd expect something like this. Something like that, where it at least holds some gains. And throughout the morning, we were looking at it and thinking, well, what is the deal? We certainly don't want to change an about face when we just were thinking, you know what, Apple's pushing up this stock and it's looking like it's gonna protect itself, so to speak, from a post-split sell-off. So as we did a bit of investigation, Kevin had found out, well, Apple has $120 billion that they could spend on share buybacks. So just going through here, on the 31st, 225 billion shares if you look down at volume, that V there. But more importantly, on September 1st, 152 billion. A good percentage of that, it is a little bit higher volume, but a large percent of that could have and must have and probably was Apple spending 125 billion on some percentage of that volume of buying. Which means, if you're doing the math in your head, I know you guys think in billions of dollars and 100 millions of shares all the time, but if you're thinking through the math, they could have spent all of that money on these 1 or 2 days and been done. And that was pretty much it. So with that in mind, as we saw this yesterday morning, we started to get some protection on, because although logic would say Apple would have it sell off the day of the split, or at least the day after, these 2 days, it looks like some of that's happening yesterday and today. So it looks like Apple people are taking some profits. Let me update this again. And we started to just get protection on. We had, as you remember, half our shares we have covered with short calls for a little bit of protection. We added puts on all of the shares that weren't covered yesterday. And then we started to add puts on everything else this morning. So it was a bit of a busy morning as well this morning. Started to get protection on. Now we're completely protected on Apple shares and have short calls out there, which we can always continue to roll down if we need to. Do have a pivot point for support there, but I would think tomorrow, in terms of the broader market, we're going to get some follow through with selling. CNBC this morning was talking about what is driving the action today, and makes complete sense that big money is out for the week, coming up to a 3-day weekend for a holiday. And what is driving today is program trading. So with the amount of volume given that day, highly ridiculous to think that retail trading was pushing anything up on September 1st. Very likely that Apple had pretty much spent everything they could to buy back shares. So that is what's triggering our thought that, okay, profit taking is now happening and let's get protection on. It's kind of funny how a couple days makes such a difference. And now thinking about a 20-25% drop or anything like that through these couple months seems like it's more and more on the table. Other positions we started to get protection on as well. Did a great job with Facebook shares. Not sure how many of you listening have any Facebook shares, but long calls, I know a lot of those were on that we took off for killer profit. Let me get back to Facebook, just if I can zoom back out. So Facebook, perfect. Does look like some things are bouncing on a pivot point, coming off of overbought. But how nice was it to finally be able to look and justify some profit taking on leaps for Facebook and protecting shares. We did the same for Visa. And Disney. So just some little updates on what we've been about. Thoughts and questions. I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised if there's no questions on Apple. But, you know, our thought was we're letting things run until the market starts to tell us different, rather than trying to outguess when the top is. Let's see if the market can give us a better idea. And at a was 3% down, it's come back a little bit, 2.78% down. The market is kind of telling us. So finally getting the post. And it'll be interesting to see what is supported and what continues to sell as big money comes back to play on next week, Tuesday, and so on, where we can start to either take some profits on protection, or if we have to add short puts on to some protection we added today to give us a little bit of leeway if it continues to go up. With August, and part of the reasoning going into all this is with August being such a record up month and with little to really less in the way of economic and jobs boost, we'll see what happens tomorrow. But short answer, just seems like with August's performance, September it's a big ask to get things to continue to move much higher. So that's where that's at. Not seeing any thoughts or questions there. Costco, and I'll get back to Smith & Wesson here in a minute. We took off Costco Leaps. I had mentioned that as an option for those of you who had done Costco Leaps. I'll just leave that on because it's basically the same thing, but we had taken profit there. Target took profits on our shorter January 21, I think they were what, 135 calls, whichever ones were making money that had before Target had popped up after earnings. So we took a profit on the ones that were nicely up, and we had a group with these very calls right here, January 22 160s, that are down a little bit, but close to the money where you know, we can have those out for further more time and dollar cost average them with plenty of profits from Target through the first part of this year. Last Tuesday we talked about Under Armour versus Nike. Ida, you mentioned that they've been losing ad sponsors or something of that nature, or ad partners. The only thing that I saw was a lawsuit with UCLA. So not sure what you were seeing there, but you're welcome to, if you want, email me the article you were looking at. But basically, any bad news that's come across with Under Armour, I haven't seen justify why Nike is taking off all to all-time highs and Under Armour gets beaten up with regard to earnings in the last quarter, where Under Armour beat their numbers, Nike did not. Under Armour went down, Nike went up. There's some undervalued, there's some value there with Under Armour clearly being undervalued. Not getting the same forgiveness, so to speak, as Nike. All right, so I'll leave that one up there. Obviously the prices are a little different, but still the same idea. And let's see, Rich, you asked about Smith & Wesson. And let me double check SWBI. So Rich, if you don't have protection on shares of Smith & Wesson, I strongly advise you to do that. I would be looking at, let's see, probably October. Probably these ones right here. That's why I'm looking at the calls. 1750s is about the closest you're going to get. 20s are too expensive. But I'd be looking at these October 20 puts. Reason, let's see. Let me see what you're saying here. Rich, you don't have a position. Oh, okay. So you're looking to open a position today before earnings after market. Gotcha. Okay, so Rich, let me think for a sec. Ida, you'll go back and check that. Thank you. Do I trade VIX and UVIXy as a form of hedging? No, because especially the UVIXy is so volatile. Hard to really gauge a trend. We look at it as more of what level it's at to see in general how it's going to affect our prices on puts. And that's really it. I've played around with it many years ago, the UVIXy paper trading, and what looks amazing one day is awful the next, and it's kind of a day trader's dream who will tell you how awesome he did one day and not talk about the day that he lost all of his profit. That's my opinion. So no, not as a form of hedging. So Rich, you're asking me if they have an expectation for a strong earnings, and I would expect so. What I'm unsure about is how the market is going to take the change in separating their shares from the American Outdoor Brands portion of their company. I don't remember if you were here Tuesday night, Rich, but just as a quick recap, as we looked at Smith and Wesson, it just looked so weird. Part of what is we thought maybe driving this action is throughout the period a couple weeks ago, again, that news of the split of off from AOBC, and then this huge bounce, and it's just been very volatile, as you can see it moving around so much. So technically it just looks weird, something I thought we should stay away from. But I would expect Smith and Wesson to do really well on earnings, just based on how they did last time, and things have only continued to get worse in the way of riots and political talk and whatnot that's driving a lot of this gun buying. So again, the part that I'm less sure about is how the market is going to see post earnings the separation from AOBC, the American Outdoor Brands portion. What gives me more confidence is the fact that that was kind of dead weight that Smith and Wesson was trying to kind of drag along. Their moneymaker was really the guns. So I would think that it would be a good way to go. That they will have a good earnings coming up. Let's take a look. If you wanted to, let's just look at leaps as opposed to shares, even though it's not the most expensive stock out there. Just another way to replace stock and have less money at risk. If you wanted to go $20, $7.40. That's fairly inexpensive. You could get it for $7. And again, if you're looking at however much you're willing to risk, if it's the amount of 10 shares, go back to 3 or 4 and give yourself a chance to guess wrong. And we've talked about it. I just talked about that with Under Armour, of course. Kevin pretty much drove that thought home with regard to leaps on Apple. Same thing. If you're looking at putting on 10 contracts, leg in with 3 or 4 to give yourself a chance to dollar cost average. So as I'm babbling on, Rich, I really actually kind of like the idea, but with an earnings, is sometimes you just never know. So again, take it easy. If it looks like their earnings is tomorrow throwing this stock up quite a bit, you can add another set or so if you want, or if it doesn't, heads down, wait a little bit to see where things end up. Get that one back and I'll post that up here. So again, technically, I wasn't very secure in what is happening with Smith and Wesson, why I was kind of holding back with doing anything, especially after we took such a nice profit on those shares through a short period of time. But if you want to look at this, let me get that screenshot. This isn't a bad option where instead of shares, you can kind of leverage a little bit and go with a leap call for Smith and Wesson. So check that out, Rich. The other option obviously is to just, and maybe even the more prudent, smart option would be to do shares and protect it. That might be Not might, that would be easier for sure. But that just depends on you and how much you're willing to put into it. No problem. Thanks, guys. And I would look at October, kind of the same area. Let's see, Smith & Wesson puts. I would go down to 270. Out to October month. Or, well, let's see. Why isn't it showing? I guess there's not other expiration dates. That's pretty much what we've got is monthly out to October. So you're kind of stuck with that. All right, guys. I think I've talked enough. We've got an interesting week ahead of us. Interesting day tomorrow. See what happens with our jobs numbers. And really everything is to kind of ignore of a bit this week with big money out of the market, and really more important to see what next week brings us. Any other questions, thoughts, guys? That does it for me. Give you a minute. Throw in any questions you might have. Are we off Monday? Yes, because it's a holiday. Stock market's closed. You're asking if we're doing the trade findings, or excuse me, the market commentary. I believe Kevin's plan is to move that to Tuesday night. So I look out for an email, but I'm pretty sure that's what he had planned. Any other questions, guys? All right, if not, looks like Apple's holding on to this pivot point. Very important to see what the next day and next week brings there, and how we work through that position to adjust and hold on to profits, and see how things react. Thanks for joining me. Enjoy being with you guys as always. Take care.